This is an official announcement from the Podcast Tonight Awards. Your favourite show that you're listening to right now has been officially nominated for a Podcast Tonight Award. But the power is in your hands. Amongst other categories, this show is in the running for the prestigious Listener's Choice Award, and they need your vote to win. You can show your support and help them get the recognition they deserve. The link to vote is in their show notes and bio. Go now and make your voice heard. This has been a message from Podcast Tonight, celebrating the best in audio.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch affairs.
It's probably the least sexy part of the work. It's okay. No. The truth is,
Today's guest brings a whole new depth, literally, to the conversations we have on this show. Andrew Lewin is a marine biologist, a science communicator, and the host of How to Protect the Ocean, a podcast that's become a go-to spot for anyone who cares about what's happening beneath the surface of our planet. Andrew's mission is simple but powerful. Help people understand the ocean, fall in love with it, and take action to protect it. And he doesn't do it with doom and gloom. He does it by breaking down complex science, spotlighting the folks doing the work, and showing us that every one of us can make a difference, whether that's through our lifestyle, our vote, or the way we show up for the planet. He spent years digging into everything from climate change and rising sea levels to overfishing, plastic pollution, coastal development, and the ripple effects these issues have on marine life and our own communities. And what I love about his approach is that he's not just pointing at the problems, he's revealing solutions, success stories, and the hopeful, innovative projects happening around the world. So if you've ever wondered what's really going on with our oceans, and if you care about the future your kids and grandkids will inherit, or if you simply want to hear from someone who's dedicated his life to making the world better, this is an episode you don't want to miss. So let's go ahead and dive right in there. Andrew, how's it going, man?
I'm great. Thanks a lot, Rich, for having me. This is I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, and one of the things I didn't mention in the intro, because I love talking to other podcasters.
Yeah.
You started the podcast 10 years ago.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, September of 2015.
Yeah.
You have over 1,800 episodes.
Yes.
So for those people that are getting into podcasting, I would say you know what the hell you're doing.
It's like everybody has their own journey, right? And
yeah.
Like you have your own journey, I had my own journey, and I continue to kind of listen to the sort of the experts and the people who have been doing it longer than I have, because podcasting's been around since like 2006, if you really go back. When the first
when it was called a netcast.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've been listening to those guys and women who have been doing that, and it's grown so much even in the last 10 years. When I started, it was an avenue for me to really just speak to people in my own way. I've always enjoyed radio. We all grew up, I was born in 78, so I'm 47. So we grew up listening to the radio. We didn't have internet when we grew up. And that was, so the personalities of the people, the way they spoke, you had your own, like disc jockeys every time, and hosts, like you would go to different stations just to listen to those. And I really enjoyed especially the rawness of getting to know the people and stuff, right? That was always the fun part of it. And of course the Howard Sterns back in the day and stuff like that, when he would do all his fun silliness and kind of like the rebel of radio kind of stuff, right? And then when I discovered podcasting in early 2010s, I was like, this is cool. Like anybody can start and we can just talk about whatever we want. I think there's like, I listened to a guy, and I want to give him credit, because Dave Jackson, who's like really known in the podcast world, right?
He's one of my mentors.
Yeah. And one of the nicest guys.
He doesn't know it, but he is.
Exactly. Same with mine. Yeah. Same with me. Yeah. And like the way he started, he was talking about how, like, if you want to learn the banjo, you can learn the banjo through podcasting if you had the ear for it, because someone's there teaching you about the banjo. It was almost like when phones, like smartphones first started coming out, like the first iPhone ever came out.
Right.
And the commercial was like, there's an app for that, because there was an app for everything, because they, Apple gave everybody the opportunity to create apps. Well, this is the same thing. Like, there's a podcast for that. Like, if someone wants to learn, there's a podcast for that. You want to learn about mental health? There's a podcast for that. You want to learn about the ocean? There's a podcast for that. But at the time, there weren't many podcasts for that.
Right.
And I was getting into the science communication world where I was, right around the BP oil spill when I started to see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that was devastating for everybody. Like the US, Canada, like the world was watching. And to see like I worked in Louisiana in 2002, sorry. And I worked like in like deep South Louisiana, like right along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. We were in the Gulf of Mexico. So I met a lot of the fishers, right? The fishermen that would will go season to season and do like crab, like blue crabs or soft-shelled crabs, and then they'd go shrimp boats, and they'd go fish, and they would do all these different things. And you got to know who they were. You got to know that was their life. It wasn't just a living to them.
Right.
It was their life. Like, it was who they were. It was their identity. It was their right, and it didn't matter if they were from the U.S. or they were immigrants coming in. Like, they all loved to be out on the ocean. They all loved what they did, and they cared about the ocean. I think a lot of people think, fishing because of overfishing. The people who actually do the fishing don't care about the ocean. And that's not true. That's like a big myth that I think a lot of people don't realize. They actually care more. They actually participate with the local science institutions and stuff like that, and scientists to be like, yeah, I'll take you on the boat. I want to know what's happening in the ocean from a scientific perspective, right?
Which makes sense, but that's how they, like you said, that's how they make their living.
Exactly. And generations. Like, it's not just them. They're not thinking about just them in that time. They're thinking about their kids. They're thinking about their grandkids and those grandkids. Like, it goes on and on and on. And so when I saw the BP oil spill, I was like, holy cow, like, this is devastating. And I saw a lot of scientists. Like, these were like big, well-known scientists within the ocean world. So Wallace J. Nichols, who's unfortunately passed away, but rest in peace. He was amazing. Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's well-known. Dr. Carl Savina. They all three of them went down to the Gulf shores, right? They all lived all across the U.S. And they went and they brought attention to it, not from a perspective of just here's the spill, but they brought about like, they educated people on what's actually happening. Because like when I was even growing up, I was a scientist. When we talked about oil spills, I always assumed that when they cleaned it up, they were actually taking the oil out of the water that was spilling in a way that they would use booms to corral it and stuff. I always thought they were doing that. Then they talk about, well, no, we're going to use these dispersants to disperse the oil and make it like less so diluted. But essentially what they were doing is they were sinking the oil. Right? They sink the oil to the depths. No, it's not good at all. And think about like with the BP oil spill, like it was one of the largest, if not the largest spill in U.S. history. I think it rivaled Exxon Valdez, if you remember when that happened. Right? And so I think that was what was really surprising, what these scientists were bringing up. And then they were talking, they were showing the tar balls. I remember Carl Safina, he actually rented a plane and flew over the area to show how widespread it was and like the oil slicks and everything like that. So we really got to see, and it was really it was the coming of age of social media for me anyway. I think social media, like there was Facebook, Twitter, I think MySpace was going out. Google, Google had its own thing. I don't even remember what Google was called.
Google Plus.
Google Plus. Yes, that's it. And, so that was the advent of that. But Twitter was really hitting on these. And like CNN and other news stations were kind of like taking the videos from, Jay Nichols and from Carl Safina and from Sylvia Earle. And they were putting them on. They had them like, journalists in the field. And they had like profiles out there and you can watch their videos and stuff. And that kind of clicked to me. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm a marine biologist that lives in Ontario, which is surrounded by the Great Lakes, which are beautiful and they're wonderful and they give us so much. But I'm not by an ocean. Those are freshwater lakes. And so I have, I've always struggled with finding jobs within the thing. So I had to do something above and beyond if I wanted to continue this going forward. So I was like, okay, like I gotta do something. So I started a blog, because blogs were big back then. There were a couple of big ones, southernfriedscience.com, deepseanews.com. And I was like, I want to bring my perspective. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I was like, Rich, I'm going to write every day. I'm going to write like a news item every day, and I'm going to write. So 5 days a week, we'll do, I'll take 2 days off because, I got to rest.
You need a break sometimes.
Yeah, you need a break. And then I realized writing sucks. Like, it's hard. I'm not good at it. It was like, I don't want to do this. This is awful. And so I was like, you know what? I'm really good at speaking. People have said that before. So I'm like, okay, no, let's do. YouTube was starting to, like, it was starting to hit, like it was hitting. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do YouTube. And so I started doing YouTube, and I had 2 young girls at the time, toddlers. So when they went to bed around like 7:45, 8 o'clock, I would be able to do the video. And then I realized, man, this is a lot. I'm doing 4 days a week. Like, this is a lot of work to edit. And so I talked to an old football teammate of mine. He was kind of in the space of like helping business people. And we had a chat. I hadn't talked to him in a while. We caught up and we had a chat. And I'm like, man, I just don't know how I can get my time out there. And he sent me a link. It was a place called mixergy.com. And it was a guy doing video. It was basically one of the first video podcasts that I ever saw. But he also had an audio podcast. He goes, have you ever heard of podcasts? I've heard of it, but I don't really know much about it. I don't listen to them and things like that. He goes, they're free. They're pretty much free to start. Well, it was a lie, because you have to have a microphone and everything like that. We know how much we can sink in, judging by your microphone that I'm looking at right now and my microphone that you're looking at. These are not cheap items, but he says, like, you can just go and you can just start a show. It's like a radio show. So I was like, you know what? That's not that bad, because the editing would be a lot less depending on what I want to do. So I started to do these.
You don't have to worry about a license.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about a license. Yeah, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff, right? And so I was like, all right, let me do this. I've been going to, marine conservation, like ocean conservation conferences for a long time. And I got to meet some amazing people. And they have great stories on the projects that they work on, or where they come from, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I want to like profile them. I want like an audience to learn about them, and because they don't get the media attention that Jay Nichols would get, or Sylvia Earle, all deserving and really great. But there are a lot more people, as they would probably say too, that could have a voice, or that should have a voice, to get out there and talk about their projects and talk about their science. Now, I also want to tell you, Richard, that at that time, we weren't talking a lot about science at that point, like within science. Like, science communication was not something that you were rewarded for in your career. In fact, you were probably looked upon a little bit less, because you would get scrutinized in the media, or the media would like take your words and manipulate it to make it what they want and stuff like that. So people like professors, like these are like highly educated, really great people within the field, were not even like, were very hesitant of going to the media. So speaking about science was not encouraged. It wasn't saying like you shouldn't, but it wasn't encouraged. So I started to I was worried, but I was like, I want to get this out there. I want people to know that scientists are really fun people, especially marine biologists. They just love the ocean. They love being on, and they're not these elitists that a lot of people are made out to be. When we look at the issues of like climate change and overfishing and all this kind of stuff, and scientists are like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. It kind of comes off as like your mom and dad telling you shouldn't do something. You know what I mean?
What are you going to do? You do it then.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, and then there's also a lot of other issues we can get into in terms of like what the perception is and stuff. But, we don't get paid a lot to do this, like to do marine biology. It's not something that you're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And we make a decent amount of money to live. But even then, some people are making, like in the 50s to 65,000s, like to in at some point, which is okay. Like, you can live off of that and still have a good life. The reward for us is being out on the ocean. The reward for us is to work in stuff that we're passionate about, right? And so that's something. So just like fishing, marine biologists don't stop when the day ends, like 5 p.m. hits. Like, we're still going, we're still learning, and that can lead to burnout for some of us, but it's a big thing for us. It's a passion that lives inside of us. You know what I mean?
And I would think when it comes to the ocean, the sea life, even at nighttime, is completely, well, not all of it, but there's a lot of different things at night versus day.
Mm-hmm. A lot of predators will come out to hunt. A lot of
things
just
like
hunt.
The wildlife.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so like your field season doesn't mean that you're going 9 to 5. Your field season, if you're out on the field, like when I was on the boat down in Louisiana, like sometimes I'm up 36 hours a day.
Wow.
You know, doing work, especially if a machine's not working. You know, if an instrument's not working, you only have, you know, maybe a couple of days to get all your data that you want for that season or that cruise. You got to get everything in a row. So sometimes you're up a lot, and it's late, it's tough. You know, the ocean is not always friendly. You know, it can be very rough. And
look at the Bering Sea.
Yeah. The Pacific, the Bering Sea. I was stuck in a tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico, and that was the worst, like 30 to 40 hours of my entire life. Like, I was petrified, you know.
I bet.
And you know, you're sitting there in these massive waves, and we were safe, but you know, it doesn't take much to go for something to go wrong in, like, you know, 15 to 20 foot seas. And so it was
cow.
crazy. Yeah. So it was great on a 100-foot boat. But regardless, like the whole, I guess like my whole point is I was watching all this and I said, like, I need to do this. So I started interviewing people, and it was funny because you know, you mentioned I launched 10 years ago. I launched in 2015. I started interviewing early 2014, and it wasn't until like mid to late 2025 when I launched, and that was because I was petrified. I'd done
2015. You launched in 2015, not 2025, Andrew.
Sorry.
That's all right.
2015. I launched in 2015. I started recording in 2014, but I was petrified, right? Because I was like, I'm worried about what my colleagues are going to say. Like, am I saying the right things? Am I saying the wrong things? Like, you know, is this like, I'm not a PhD in anything. I got a master's degree. I know what I'm talking about for the overview and the oversight, but am I really saying what I'm supposed to do? And so I didn't know what was going to happen. And finally, I just said, screw it. And I pressed that publication button, and I was like, let's see what happens. And the funny thing is when you launch, you don't hear anything from anybody. It's like crickets, because you get like maybe like my mom listened to it, and I don't even think she listened to the whole thing. God bless her soul. There's no way she listened to the whole thing, right? But yeah, so but then it started to get some traction. I started to cover some papers, like some research papers that people had, as I started to go solo. Like, I did my first 10 episodes were all interviews, and then I was like, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. I'm gonna move, instead of 1 day a week, I'm gonna move to 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
So I started to move to 5 days a week. And then I was like, then a buddy helped me out. I met this guy. He's like, hey, I want to write your show notes. I'm like, perfect. I don't want to write show notes. You can do all 5 of them. Yeah, that could be a headache. It's a huge headache, but he wanted to write. He wanted to get experience. So we lasted about over a year together, working together. He just did both of us was volunteer, right? We just wanted to get in. We wanted to do something a little bit more than what our jobs were providing us. And it started to catch on. And then finally I realized when it really hit, a guy who's a friend of mine right now, he lives in England. There was a conference that was happening in Newfoundland, right in Canada. And he's like, hey, you coming to this conference? It was called the International Marine Conservation Conference. Very, very good conference. One of my favorites. And I was like, well, I wasn't planning on it. He's like, well, it's kind of in your backyard. It's a flight, but it's kind of in your backyard. I'll tell you what, you come here, I'll set you up with a bunch of interviews. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I'll set you up with a bunch of interviews with all our keynotes that we have. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So he set me up in it was like a hotel room that had a living room. So it was less creepy. You're not coming in. I'm not asking people to come in and there's like beds everywhere. No, it was just like a living room kind of part of the hotel. And we'd have a beer, we'd like talk and stuff like that. And as I was at the conference, people were recognizing me from my voice, which was really cool because I wasn't video at that point. And I was like, wow, people are really recognizing. And so much the fact, like I did a talk on my podcast and how important it is for podcasts. And I had my cover art up on the projector screen. And somebody walked in by mistake. This person was not even part of the conference. And then she walked in and she made a mistake by coming into the wrong room. And she's like, oh, I'm not in the right room. But I'm like, oh, I listened to that podcast. Oh, and I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean you listen to the podcast? She's like, yeah, I listen to that all the time. Like, who does it? Whoever does it, the host, Andrew I'm like, well, I'm Andrew. She's like, oh my gosh. And we started meeting, we chatted and stuff. She wasn't even part of the conference. She wasn't even in science. She was just like a lawyer or something. And she was just like, yeah, she's like, I love your podcast. I discovered it once and I listen to it all the time. Yeah. Yeah. So it was really cool. So I started to get more and more confidence as I got a lot more positive feedback.
Right.
And then it just kind of went. I've continued on with the mission of like, if I can just make one person of my audience aware and kind of just think about the ocean a little bit more, then I've done my job, right? No judgment, understanding that I come with faults, understanding that we live in a society, no matter what country you're in, no matter, that is wasteful, that is built on waste and built on taking from the environment, right? You look at our energy sectors across the world, you look at it, we live in this kind of sector. So I can't blame myself. I can't blame you. I can't blame an individual who's just living life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's expensive to go above and beyond and be environmentally friendly. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And until like the big companies and the big corporations start to make these environmentally friendly things at scale, which again could be against environment, but you know what I mean? Like until we get into a system where we're looking at more renewable energy, we're looking at more environmentally friendly energy, no matter what side of the aisle or what political sort of leanings you have, this is about us as a species and us and taking care of the planet. And so there's no judgment. Now, doesn't say that in my podcast I don't disagree with certain leaders, and including my own, including the US, including like UK and all that kind of stuff and the decisions that they make. However, we have to learn that we have to, like the whole point you mentioned at the beginning is like voting is like the biggest power that we have in democratic societies, and the choice. And sometimes we don't have the best choice depending on which you lean in. That choice may not be your first choice, but we have to make a choice. And by talking to those leaders who are our representatives and saying what's important to us more and more, and the more people that talk to those leaders, which we don't do enough as a collective, the more they're going to start to get in their heads that, hey, it's not about who donated the most to get them in there. It's about the people. And if we don't listen to the people, no matter what political affiliation you have, then you are not a good leader and you should not be there and you will not get voted back in. So that's the goal of the podcast, is just make that one person just think about the ocean a little bit more. And that could be in their own purchases, that could be there. But I don't expect one individual to change the world by not buying something in a plastic bottle. You know what I mean?
But one voice can make a big difference.
One voice can. There have been some great leaders across the world, and some get more attention than others, and some get scrutinized quite a bit for speaking their truth, and they still continue to go. And but you see people follow. You see people, climate change movement or climate change action didn't happen as much until one teenage girl decided to go on a climate strike every Friday at her school. And that voice just kept going bigger and bigger. And then not only was there that voice, but it wasn't just that voice in her country. It was voices of other women in different countries and other young women and men and all different types of people in those countries who didn't probably get as much accolades as that person, but they're the ones who really stood up. And in some places, in countries where it was dangerous to stand up as a voice, against the government and pressuring the government. And so, like, you have to give them credit, and they should, because they deserve it, and be like, yeah, this is what we need to be worrying about. This is what we should be supporting overall.
Yep. So something you mentioned earlier, and those people that are listening, especially if the ones that want to get into podcasting or even podcasting now, you said when you started the podcast, you were worried about what your colleagues were going to say, not the listeners. You didn't even mention anything about listeners, whether anybody was going to listen. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people get into podcasting mess up. Their focus is like, oh my God, is anybody going to listen? What are they going to think? No. You have fun doing what you're doing. Yeah. And the other thing is,
I truly enjoy it.
Just like with me, you're learning from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key. I think that's what a lot of podcasters don't, they get into it and they don't really do it to learn.
No, I think especially, yeah, sorry.
Certain niches, but
yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, you're not only learning, people are learning from yours.
Yes.
As well.
As we learn from each other, right? I think that's I think that's what one of the interesting things about podcasting has been, and I hope it continues to be. We hear about the podcasts on the news, about the major podcasts that are usually held by celebrities or comedians or people who are well known. But like the quote unquote independent podcasters, we're here to support each other. Like when you go I've never been to a conference, a podcasting conference, although I want to.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to go so bad.
Right. But it's like, it's when you go and you have that in common. We've all been through the same struggles. Nobody likes hearing their voice the first time they're editing their podcast. It's like the worst thing they do. And you go from like when you first start editing your podcast, you go from that and not liking your voice to say 3-4 years down the road, if you make it that long, to how can I make this more interesting? Like, how can I present the material, the topic that I'm covering in a more interesting way to get, not necessarily, sometimes it's to get more listeners, but it's also to grow as a communicator, because that's what we all are. We are podcasting a topic that we enjoy, or multiple topics that we enjoy, and what we want to do is, how do I present this? How do I create the story in a way, or tell the story in a way that will intrigue the audience, my audience, and make it more valuable for them, so that when they tune in, you know, when they open up that podcast app, they're checking, you know, conversation with Rich Bennett, or they're checking How to Protect the Ocean first, because they're like, oh yeah, he released an episode recently, so I'm going to go and I'm going to check that out.
And something else you mentioned earlier too, and you and I both do this, but I see this with a lot of people that want to get into podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both were listening to Dave Jackson when we first started.
Yeah, yeah.
Or probably even before we even turned the microphone on. Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Him and Daniel J. Lewis.
Yes.
Those are the two I listened to all the time before I started.
Yeah.
And of course, still do. And my God, Daniel J. Lewis, everything he's done for podcasters.
Oh, my God.
Since then. And even Dave.
Both
and Alex from Podmatch as well.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, they all listened to podcasts. If you want to get into podcasting and you're not listening to podcast, something ain't right.
True. Yeah, because you get that, like, you can take the little tidbits of ideas. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll do that every once in a while. I'll just listen to a random podcast. And sometimes it's like, most of the time it's like, oh, this is an interesting topic. I don't know this person, but I'm going to listen to it. Sometimes I go on the podcast charts and listen to that, but a lot of times I'll search on a topic and I'll see like, oh yeah, okay, I want to see what this person has to say, because I find that like a little bit more interesting. But also, like, I listen to the way they communicate, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to try that, or that's a really cool way to work on that. And I think that's something interesting. One book that really helped me, and I think it's not even just for scientists. It's a book called "Don't Be Such a Scientist." And I
love that.
Yeah, and it's such a cool thing. So this is a guy. I just want to get the author just to make sure. It's Randy Olson. So Randy Olson was working at Harvard. I believe as a professor in marine biology. So very good school, you know, affluent. You know, he's a smart guy. Decided to quit his job at Harvard and go into the movies and make a documentary on evolution. So I think it was called.
Oh wow!
I think it was called something by the dodo, something like that. And it hit well, and he's become like. And then he wrote this book, "Don't Be Such a Scientist." And the thing is with "Don't Be Such a Scientist," is it really changed the way I thought about communication. So for us as a scientist, we are taught by facts. So it's all about the brain. You just spew facts. So if I used to tell people about climate change, I'm like, yeah, so here's the data. This is what's happening over the last, since the industrial age, we've seen an increase in absorption of CO2 and into the atmosphere. It's getting warmer. It's by fossil fuels, blah, blah, blah. Here's the data. And then people are like, well, I don't believe you, or that's not true, or what about this data? Or they're not engaging. They don't care.
They don't understand it.
It's doom and gloom. Why are you bothering me with this stuff? Like, this is annoying. And then so what Randy teaches is don't speak to the mind like just by spewing facts. Is speak to the gut, because that's where emotion is. That's where you hit the emotion. When you laugh with your gut. You know what I mean? Like a comedian says a funny joke and you start laughing, you're belly laughing. You know what I mean? Like it's a laugh. When you cry, it's like an emotion that you feel in your core. And so he's like go to that. Speak to the emotional aspect of this. And I learned that throughout time, where it's like, tell the story. we all learn by stories. Before we every television show, every movie is a story. It's just a visual depiction now but when we, as human species over the years, when we didn't have that visual perspective, it was audio stories. It was just telling of stories, and you use your imaginations with books and stuff like that. And so he's like, tell the stories, but get into the emotional aspect of the stories. So that's why when I talked about the BP oil spill, I didn't start by like, oh man, dolphins were dying and the sea turtles were dying. We started to pull. I didn't pull that because it's a lot of doom and gloom. A lot of people are like, oh man, that really sucks, but I don't want to hear about this. Like,
right.
I can't do anything about that. Well, I talked about the livelihoods of fishers who are going out and loving it and, passing on from generation to generation, good people who want to protect the ocean, and their lives were changed by this oil spill because they can't fish in certain spots where they wanted to, where they have been allowed to because of this oil spill and the chemicals that are in it to disperse the oils. For years, they couldn't do it, right? And then people didn't want shrimp from the Gulf of Mexico after that because there's oil in there and there's dispersants and, it takes a long time to recover, which, we know fishermen don't make a lot of money. Like it's not especially like the I'm not gonna say small fishermen because they're not small people, but the artisanal, we call them. So like the independent, just like an independent podcaster, right. Not an industrial movement of the podcast industry where you have, Podcast One or all these podcast networks that are funneling money to you and you're getting all this. You're talking about like you and I trying to make it as getting our message out. And if we can make some money off of this as a business, that's even better. Right. Oh yeah. That's what these fishers are. So I tell the story of the fishers because that's how people start to be like, well, that sucks. Like these people are just trying to make a living. They're trying to get their kids. Like they're trying to have a life like we're having a life. Not, I can't connect to a dolphin dying. It sucks. I hate to see it. I hate to hear about it. I will disconnect if I keep hearing that. But if we talk about the people, and if we start with the people story, and the people who live around that and depend around that, it starts to get a little bit more interesting, and you feel like you can do more about it. Right? Especially nowadays with crowdfunding and all this kind of stuff, people can do whatever they want. I just heard a story, Rich, and this is not related to oceans, but I just heard a story where there was a creator, influencer, whatever you want to call him. He goes around and he tries to help people. His aunt died when he was 10. He felt the connection. He's always felt the connection. He wants to help people out. Unfortunately, she took her own life. So he goes around and he goes, hey guys, around the world, he talks to his audience like, hey, if you know anybody who needs help, let me know. I want to help them. This guy, this older man, he's 88 years old. His wife passed away 7 years ago. He had to sell his home. He's in the U.S. He had to sell his home. He had to pay for all the medical bills and all this kind of stuff. He's still working at 88, 5 days a week in a store, right? Doesn't say the store, just bad luck hits this guy. Wonderful old man. This guy goes out to him and is like, we want to help you. They started a GoFundMe page and they told his story through the video. That was the content. And so far, according to the video, they raised $1.5 million.
Good Lord.
Right. So this guy can retire. That was the whole point. I want to retire you. I don't have the money to do it. Can you guys help? So by telling people stories, you can help people. Now, not everybody's going to get $1.5 million, on that kind of stuff. Right. But the idea is that story moved people to the point where they're donating $100, $200, $300, $5, $10. It was just the sheer amount of people that can do that. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see crowdfunding coming up with a lot of different projects, like graduate projects, science projects, Patreon, things like that, where scientists are actually becoming influencers themselves by doing science and showing people the science. Right? Taking Makes videos, sense, underwater videos and everything like that. This is what I'm doing. This is there's a woman, I forget her name. I haven't looked at her in a while, but who worked in the Maldives. Beautiful, beautiful place. You would think when you go there, it's extravagant, these massive resorts, you're on these big boats. She was a PhD student, so not getting paid, probably just enough to cover tuition. She's staying in literally a hut on the water. Okay.
Wow.
And that hut leaks with storms. There's ants in her bed every once in a while. It's tough. Ew. And then all day, every day, she goes out in the field and she deploys these acoustic monitors because she was looking at acoustics and how it affects coral reefs. But as she goes and she puts it down and she secures them, things like that, she talks about the difficulties of what happens. So sometimes the data logger gets it gets waterlogged and it shorts out the circuit. So she's put that out for however many days, has to download the data and it doesn't work. She's like, crap. Now I got to get a new one. It costs $300 to get a new one. I'm a PhD student. I only have a certain amount in my grants to do that. And so and then some people steal them. Fishermen will grab them. They look like GoPros. So some people will just see them like, oh, that doesn't belong to anybody. I'll just grab them and I'll just go. So like she's showing the fun and the beauty of living out in the Maldives and studying these creatures. And, every once in a while she's diving. There's some manta rays that come around and they kind of do circles around her and stuff like that. But then she also talks about the difficulty of, it's her story, but the difficulty of losing loggers and how hard it could be living in the Maldives in a hut when you're not rich, and not have enough money for a resort and that kind of stuff. And it kind of just shows her story, and people like she had a TikTok about it, and the more people watch, the more she got money for her TikTok. But the story ended up, last time I checked, she got defunded, or her funding didn't get funded for the next year, so she had to stop. She's back in the UK trying to raise money, trying to find grants to get this stuff. So it's like it's the constant battle, but it's that story of that person who's a scientist, definitely not elitist, but has her beliefs, and she's you following her life through watching her do science. And it's kind of fun when you see it, because that's what we see every day. That's what I see all these people that do every day. But you may not see it because you don't know, because they're out in the remote islands, or they're out on a boat and they don't have internet access all the time. But now people are starting to take videos, this younger generation, and document what they do, to talk about it, because they feel the passion to talk about it, right? And they want to get people to know. And now it's generally okay to talk, science communication and stuff like that. So we're seeing a big evolution in chatting, more podcasts. When I started, I was like one of the only ones on ocean. And now there's like a plethora, all education, conservation, careers. There's a lot of different things. And it's not just oceans, it's wildlife and everything. It's really, really great to see.
So with the one, How to Protect the Ocean, 10 years.
Yeah.
1,800 episodes, over 1,800 episodes. And I know this is probably going to be hard for you to answer. What's because you have guests on as well.
It's a solo and guest, yeah.
Right. What's one of the most surprising things about the ocean that you learned from one of your guests, or, during your whole journey of this?
It always surprises me how much we don't know.
Right.
Every time a guest, so it's not necessarily one particular guest. One of the biggest episodes that I've had, and one of the most that there's a couple that moved me. So one, we did I interviewed a scientist, Dr. Naomi Rose, great scientist, orca biologist, but also like an advocate. And she works for a nonprofit.
Did you say an orca biologist?
Yeah, like killer whale biologist. Yeah,
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's people who study that all the time, because some of them are endangered, right? The south resident orca population in the northwest of the United States, they're highly endangered, right? So people study them all the time to find out what they're doing and how they're doing. People know them by individuals, like they actually know them by individuals. They know their character. They know how they act and who they hang out with and their names. And yeah, it's really, really cool.
I had no idea.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No worries.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. You can go down the orca route. I don't call them killer whales. They're also known as killer whales. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just people call them killer whales like back in the day because they used to be afraid of these whales, right? There's never been a report in the wild of an orca harming a human. Never. And they've been swimming around us for a while. I don't recommend swimming with them, just in case. They are a massive 65-foot, tooth
I don't recommend swimming with anything bigger than you.
But there are people who do it, and they've been fine. But there's nothing they've never had. They're very curious and very intelligent animals. But anyway, so but like I call them orcas just because that's like they go by orcas. But and to take away that sort of characteristics of them being killers kind of thing. But we I interviewed her about Blackfish, the documentary that came out in the mid 2010s.
Oh, okay.
Right, about the whales in captivity. And so the reason why I had her on was because as it came out, there were a lot of people like SeaWorld and things like that were talking against it, saying it wasn't scientifically valid, the science is wrong, this and that. She's a scientist, a PhD. She did her PhD in orcas. She knows, she was one of the scientists that would provide information to the producers. And so I had her on. I knew her husband. I had him on like the week earlier. He goes, you need to interview Naomi. And of course, like she's been providing me episodes ever since with great content around like, captivity and things like that. Mm-hmm. And she kind of really opened the science behind orca captivity and what we discovered from the experiment that we call orca captivity, capturing orcas and bringing them into a cage or a tank, a small tank. Like these are animals that swim thousands of kilometers per day, up to thousands of kilometers per day. And now they're in this small tank. And the psychological problem that we realize how emotionally intelligent they are over time. Like we realize that over time by studying them. And so now we know from a scientific point of view that it's not a good idea to have these in captivity. So now, like, the Blackfish was basically telling that, but it came off the story of Dawn, I forget her last name, a dolphin trainer who was killed by an orca during her interaction with it. It showed video of like another trainer being like, this orca like took the trainer and kept dunking him under the water and holding him under the water. He was okay after, but still. And just showing like this, like how they started to not rebel, but how they started to do these interesting things. And, SeaWorld was covering it up and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, since then, that movie has changed the captivity game in the U.S. and in Canada. Both U.S. and Canada have come out. There's no more captive whales. You can't capture whales in the wild and bring them in. You can't sell what they were doing. A lot of the big money makers, they were selling their sperm. Believe it or not.
What?
Yeah, breeding captive orcas was a huge thing. So they would go to a different tank, they would go to a different SeaWorld, or they go to somewhere in China and Russia and they'd pay for it. It was big money. So they would start to do that. And so that is banned in Canada and the US, and some other places as well. I think France as well. So now it's just a matter of like, what do we do with these? They can't go in shows anymore. They can't do shows. So a lot of them are shutting down or changing their business model and stuff. And, the science community is not saying that they're bad people. They did some bad things in terms of trying to cover it up and stuff like that. And the people who are training and the people who are working with these animals are great people. They want to do the best for these animals. It's just now we're in a situation where we know what we're doing to them. How do we stop? Like we know how to stop it, but what do we do with the animals that we have now? Mm-hmm. How do they go? So there's a big debate. But anyway, that interview was one of my biggest interviews, and it was like right off the bat. But it also made me realize there's a lot more to, a lot of the documentaries that are out there. There's a lot more story behind the story. And that made me kind of change the way I look at doing interviews and trying to get the stuff that people wouldn't normally hear or see, and get that out there to get them to kind of like think about the ocean in different ways. So like I talk a lot about orcas. I talk a lot about beluga whales. I talk a lot whales, dolphins, sharks, fish, invertebrates, like lobsters, crab, fisheries, climate change, all that kind of stuff just kind of came out of that. So that's one of the shows that really helped me. And then the other ones I do is I cover a lot of what's happening within the field of marine biology and marine conservation. So it's more for the people who are listening who are scientists and who are biologists. And one of the most memorable one, and a kind of one that I'm proud of in a way of what it actually did.
You're listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. We'll be right back.
The Harford County Health Department can help eligible pregnant women and children with low to average incomes get free health insurance through the Maryland Children's Health Program. Call 410-877-1040. That's 410-877-1040.
Was an episode I did. A friend of mine came on. She wanted to come on. I did not pressure her to come on, but she was a graduate student. Unfortunately, somebody assaulted her during a graduate student, and then that person was kind of protected, and there was a lot of stuff going on. The funding agency that funded them didn't know that he had done this, but they kept promoting him and making him having him do speeches and this and that, and so it's her, like the story was her navigating her life as a graduate student, trying to one, recoup from the assault, and two, like be a graduate student, which is hard enough. So you have those two things. But then seeing him all the time, close to him and not feeling safe and going through it. Then she actually spoke to a senator, her state senator, and that senator, believed her, worked with her, and they came out with better legislation to protect students at universities in that state. to be able to, do better, basically to protect the students better. And then we found out once we aired the episode, now this was I told people before, this is like heavy material. So if you've been through an assault or then you may not want to hear this.
Put up that trigger warning.
Yeah, put a little trigger warning. And but when people listen to it, the agency that provided the funding for that person reached out to her, the guest, and said, we had no idea that this has happened. We are very sorry for our role in continuing to fund this person. This person will never be funded by us. And we are changing our practices in how we fund people and the criteria of how we fund people.
Oh, wow.
So just by someone listening to the show, not only is this brave woman talking about it and being able to change legislation, work to help change legislation, but we also got another granting agency who understood what the problem was by listening to the show and changing their practices in the future. That is like when I look at like my most impactful interview, I feel like that was one of my most impactful interviews from a way of protecting the people that I work with that I can't do, right? Like I can't do normally. This is a way of being like, I'm just a vessel in this woman's journey as a great scientist and a great person, and helping get the word out and amplify the stories that they all go through. Right. So that was like a really big thing for me. And I continue to like take that with pride.
That's one of the other reasons I do this. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of people that, have been sexually assaulted or in recovery or whatever. And when you have listeners respond back to you and thank you for that, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's just to me it's overwhelming because I'm really not expecting that.
100%. I get emotional over it. When people talk to me about it and they listen to that episode. Because I think also, too, it's like, again, when I first heard that and, I'm doing the episode, I kept asking, like, are you sure you want to do this? And even after, I'm like, do you want me to release this? You can listen to it. Like, you let me know. She was great. Whatever she decided to do, that was what she said. She wanted to publish it. And as a white guy, like a middle-aged white guy, for me, to be able to provide that help. Like at the beginning, I don't think like a lot of times, like, I don't know what to do in these situations. I don't know how I can help. I listen, you do what your people have asked you to do, and you listen, you learn and you listen, and each person's different in how they react. Obviously you don't want to see anybody do that, but as like a white guy, sometimes you're just like, am I going to add to the problem, or am I going to help solve it? Or am I going to help this person through the problem in any way that I can? And the fact that I got to help in this way by helping the story get on the platform that reached that organization, that helped me to be like, you know what? Even if you don't think you can do something, you can do something. You know what I mean? And you may not mean to do it, but this was just a great benefit to that. But it's a testament to her and her coming on this podcast and talking about it.
And the other good thing with that is too, you're seeing more and more people that have gone through that going on podcast and talking about it, and raising awareness. And it's helping other people. It's saving lives.
100%.
Whether they know it or not.
100%.
I want to ask you about something else. Two things. You got another podcast, Beyond Jaws.
Yes.
When did you start that and why?
So that was a podcast that almost was derived from the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Like my podcast. I had a guy who's my co-host for Beyond Jaws. His name is Dr. David Ebert. Dave's been in the shark science game since the 70s. Did his PhD in South Africa, and he's kind of a guy who knows everybody within the game. And I asked him to come on. We talked about what's the shark? Basking sharks along the California coast. A basking shark. So it's actually kind of funny. So basking sharks are these large sharks, and they people often mistake them for a great white shark, but they're kind of they're brownish a lot of the times, but they're large. So there's a lot of people like, oh my God, that's a great white shark, but they actually don't eat meat. Well, they eat meat, but they eat plankton. So they eat like little tiny critters, microscopic critters. They don't actually eat like fish or people or anything like that. They're not like that type of shark. But when people see it, they like freak out and they're like, oh my gosh, like that's a great white. And so they're endangered in the U.S. and in Canada along the Pacific coast. And so I want to have somebody on to talk about it to get people more aware. There was talk about taking them off the list, or maybe they're not on. There's talk about at the time. So anyway, so I somebody told me about him. I reached out to him. He was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And like we got on the call, and to be honest, Rich, it's like you and I, like we just hit it off right away.
Right.
Just comfortable. I think we ended up having a 2-hour conversation before we recorded for an hour, just about everything, just like the sharks and his career and sports and all that kind of stuff. And so, we just had a great time. And I said, hey, look, anytime you have something come out, a paper or anything like that, this guy discovers sharks. So he's discovered and named over 50 different types of sharks. Like, he's known as the Lost Shark Guy. Highly recommend you check out his YouTube channel.
Wow.
I've been editing and helping him with a kind of like a bit of a vlog of what he does to look for sharks. He goes to these different fishing villages all over the world. But he sometimes they're like little sharks, they're deep sea sharks, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. But yeah, he's done a lot. So with him knowing everything and us getting along and him really enjoying podcasts, he came on another couple times and we kept saying, we got to do a podcast here. We got to do a podcast together. And I said, let's do a podcast together. And so we started off as part of a society. So I had another podcast that I was working on with somebody called the Marine Mammal Science Podcast, and it was with the science. It was with the Society of Marine Mammalogy, so an actual like biological society that talks about marine mammals and studies marine mammals. And this one was the American Elasmobranch Society, and so they talk about sharks, rays, chimeras, all these different types of sharks, and so I said, why don't we start a podcast where we interview people within the society to get people to get to know the different people within the society. So we started that. We did that for a year with them. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. There were some things that are happening at the board level. There was a bit of a change in sort of knowledge and outlook and stuff like that. So it didn't really, pan out the way we had hoped. Right. And so they said, yeah, we're not going to put it under the name of the American Elasmobranch Society anymore. We're like, you know what? That's okay. Like, we get it. We really like doing this, and people were listening, and people really enjoyed it. So we're like, we're just going to continue it on our own. We still had funding for it, and we got funding for it, so we were getting paid to do it. Not much, but we were getting paid to do it. And it was a great the Save Our Seas Society was funding this, which is a big society for funding like new kind of projects and things like that that normally wouldn't get funded. And they're a great organization. And so we were like, okay, cool. Like, let's continue doing it. And we've been doing it since 2021. And the goal of it is to interview a shark scientist to understand how they became shark scientists and understand their careers. So some of these careers, just like Dave, they've been in these for like 35 plus years. So they're giving advice for new people. They're doing all that kind of stuff. And it's great. It's been working out really, really great. People like young people are listening, and they're like young scientists, and they're like, hey, you know what? Like, let's hang out. Like, I didn't know this person that I looked up to had such trouble, like a meandering career path, where they were like, oh my gosh, like this is really great. Like, I didn't know that it's not a straight path. Like, you don't go to school, get graduate work, and then get a job right out the bat. You could work in some other kind of industry. You can do this, and you can go in and out depending, because like, you just don't know what the jobs are. It's not easy to find a job as a shark scientist. There's not as much funding. There's more people that are working in the industry. So we talk a lot about that. Then we'll do like these bonus episodes on like, oh, there was a report on oceanic white-tip sharks in the Pacific and what their population levels are like and how they've changed over time and stuff like that. So we'll do that every once in a while. Or somebody who received an award, so we'll profile them and be like, congratulations, why'd you get this award? Because I did this. Well, that's awesome. Like, let's celebrate. That's great. And so yeah, so it's a really great. We've had people who have just graduated, to graduate students, to people who've been in the industry for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it's been a great journey. And Dave knows a lot of the people personally. So we get great stories out of them. We talk about like how they, some of them, how they met back in the 80s at a conference, and they're having drinks, and they get up to no good. And then they go back, and then now 30 years later, they're working on a paper together. It's just cool stuff like that,
It's the behind the scenes stuff
Yes.
that people don't think about.
Exactly. It's the
stories
bonds, right? You build these bonds with careers, right? Like you were in the military. I can just imagine like the bonds that you built with, your fellow military personnel, right?
And we still stay in touch.
Exactly, right?
That's why they call it a brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I take it with those two podcasts, is that what started the Speak Up for the Blue podcast network? And do you want to add more podcasts to that?
Yes and yes. The network.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. The network. The idea came when I first started. I was like, "Ooh,
okay."
I was like, "We can have a bunch of these." So I started off. How to Protect the Ocean when I first started was called Speak Up for Blue. So that's where Speak Up for Blue came from. And I was like, speak up for the ocean. The ocean is blue. Right. I changed the name over time for search because I didn't have the word ocean in it. And that was a really important thing I learned. But
does make a difference.
Yeah. But what happened was, as I started to go to these conferences and I started covering these, I started to go to more of these conferences and doing podcast episodes because it's like latest research. Nobody's ever heard of this before. Let's interview these people at the conferences. And people were like, I want to start a podcast. How do I do it? I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. This is how we do it. And then so what I would do is I say, look, I can handle all the technical stuff for you, like putting it up, signing up for the account, this and that. I'll even pay for it, like just to get you up there. You just send me what you want to send. I can talk you through like the microphones and all that kind of stuff. Just send me what you send. So I had a couple, like probably about 4 or 5 that I'd helped start, where the other people were doing this, and that was the idea. I was like, let's do a network. Like if we all kind of come together, there was a couple of other people who were doing podcasts. I'm like, if we all come together and team up and just focus our voices outwards to really get more topics out there, get more fun things like. 2 female scientists got together and started what they call Madam Curiosity, which was about documenting women scientists over history. So Madam Curie, like talking about that. It was great, wonderful. But the problem was for them, like as you know, doing a podcast is extremely time consuming. No matter what you think, you can sit down and record, but that's just a percentage, like a small percentage of what you do. That's a small percentage. Yeah, if you want to grow and you want to, publish it and edit it and all that kind of stuff. And so, like a lot of the people had their careers. Some of them are graduate students, like doing PhDs and stuff like that, which is a job and a half, in my opinion. So they didn't always have the time to make it consistent. And so, like over time, it just didn't they didn't work out. And so they kind of said either they paused it or they went on their own. And I said, you know what, take your show and you keep it. Like they said, can we keep it? Yeah, like this. I'm just paying for the hosting, so it'll help me. If you're not going to contribute at this point, there's no point in me paying for the hosting. Right. You take it, and some of them were little disagreements and stuff like that. It was me learning how to deal with having a network and what goes into it. And I probably had too many shows, and I never met because I was so busy doing my own, working, being a parent. I'm a hockey coach, football coach, trying to do too much. Yeah. I have no time. I sleep very rarely. So, like it was just me not managing it properly and keeping people connected and stuff like that. And then getting the business side of it too, to make it worthwhile. So a lot of the shows left. So I had like 1, 2, 3, 4 plus mine, so 5 shows, and then 4 of them, 6, and then 4 of them left. 5 of them left. I had my own, and then Beyond Jaws started, and I was like, okay, cool. And I had a couple of other ones. I had a network, like I used Podpage. I had a network. I have a network account with them, so I just put up. I'm like, hey, you guys want to be part of my network? It's just basically posting this on this website. Right? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. I took those down now, and now it's really the 2 of us because that's what I can focus on, and so. The goal is to build it out slowly, but I'm going to be a little bit more business-like in this time. Yes. And every show that I start is going to be funded, but I get control. So I control the content. I may not be the host all the time, but I'm controlling the content. I'll pay a host because they'll be funded. And that's how I want to go from there. Because then I can say, look, if this host doesn't have time to go beyond 6 episodes, then I can get a different host to do it. Or I can film. I like that. And so it's just a matter of, it's nothing against the other people that I was working with. It was just their jobs and it wasn't their priority. So if I can pay a dedicated host, then maybe it becomes a little bit more of a priority for them. If they want to continue on, then we can talk about, negotiating stuff. And So the idea is to like almost like make a business out of this, not just go from, hey, yeah, that's a really cool idea, let's do this podcast, is let's try and build this up as much as possible, and let's consider our efforts to get money from sponsors and companies that are really eco-friendly that want to help get the message out. So that's the goal. I actually have a crowdfunding campaign out now to do a seagrass podcast. Yeah, I'll send you the link if you want to post it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the goal, so seagrasses aren't really talked about a lot, but they're just as important as coral reefs. And I've over the years, I've talked to a lot of seagrass biologists and restorationists. And so we do a lot of podcasts on that. And I said, you know what, this is something that I'd really like to do, but in a different model. So the goal is the goal is for the podcast, not just to educate audience members, but also kind of connect researchers together. So by talking about one say project or research paper, people on the other side of the world could listen to it and then be like, oh, I'm going to contact that person. So it's almost like a bit of a networking ability, is putting them on a platform and so people can hear about it. And then the other idea is like the people who fund it, who pay for it, will have a portion of that will go towards restoring another seagrass meadow, somewhere in the world. And we're going to follow that project along. And so give people updates. So it's like, by listening and by helping this podcast get going, you can help restore a seagrass meadow, which has wonders for biodiversity, for carbon capture, and all this kind of stuff.
There are so many things you could do podcast-wise to help. Because once you mentioned coral reef, I thought of one of my best friends who unfortunately passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And one of the things that he wanted was for his ashes to be
in a reef ball.
Yes. I never heard of that until I was like, "That's a thing. You could do that."
Yeah, you can do that. But
it's just I think those of you listening, you definitely have to go and listen to Andrew's podcast again, How to Protect the Ocean, because I do believe that a lot of people don't realize the stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot we didn't talk about. We mentioned the oil spills. People think about that. But the other thing is, too, the plastics that are in the water. Yeah, and that's one thing. And I don't know if you know anything about this. Because with power, they run a lot of cables underwater, electrical and all that. Does that affect sea life as well? Or do we know yet?
I mean, we've been laying cable for a number of decades now.
Right.
For quite some time. There are environmental, depending on the country, there are environmental assessments that company has to go through, to undergo before they can lay any kind of cable. Locally, because of where it's labeled and where it's laid and how it's actually installed, it will have a local effect on where it's installed, because it's installed on the bottom of the ocean. So whatever's around that at the time will either get blasted or will get, move, hopefully.
Okay.
So like, fish move, crabs move, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But they'll probably not put it through, or try not to put it through like a specific habitat. Okay. Unless they don't know it's there, because some of these are pretty deep. You know what I mean? And some we don't know a lot about some of the ocean. For some reason, I'm thinking of like the Black Sea, especially because the Black Sea has a lot of cable that goes through it. But so they could have an effect on marine life. I don't know if we know exactly like any kind of metals leaching from the construction materials that are on there. The effect generally probably won't have a huge effect, because again, it's local, and like the metals won't just go through, and it's not as if like if there's plastic used, I don't think you wouldn't be able to use plastic at that depth, because it has to be a specific, like a titanium or something like that, for it to handle the pressure at that depth. But it wouldn't have like a huge effect, but there are definitely regulations around it.
Okay.
That should, in most countries, can't say every country, and whether that's enforced, that's another thing too.
Have you had anybody on yet talking about? Now I'm thinking military wise, unexploded ordnance in the ocean and how they can leak.
Yeah, no, I haven't had anybody on for the military talking about that. I have, when I worked in the Gulf of Mexico, we used to pick up Navy researchers from the Navy base, I think, in Alabama.
Okay.
Is it Mobile? No.
I believe so.
Yeah. Is it
It's somewhere down there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were Navy was our taxi service. I don't know.
But I used to participate in studies around that, and like to go into a Navy yard like that. Yeah. And actually, that was right around when the USS Cole came back. You know, when the ship that had the thing.
Yes.
Just to see those battleships and how big they actually are.
They're amazing.
TV doesn't do it justice of how massive these buildings are. Like they are buildings. You know what I mean?
Some of those things, you look at an aircraft carrier, it's like a freaking city.
It is. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went on the Midway that's stationed, the old Midway, the USS Midway that's stationed in San Diego. It's like a museum now. That's and they're like, yeah, that's like a tiny one. You're just like, what are you talking about? This is a tiny one. But anyway, yeah, we used to have them on, and they used to do a lot of optics to look for like sea mines and things like that. So they were looking at studying how to study optics and different things. And we had like reserve Navy SEALs come in. These guys are like, you just sit there. You're like, you are built different. You are built different than everybody else, and military people, like, God love them. Like I definitely support the military, and I like I said this before, but thank you for your service and everything. But you guys are built different, just in the process. And I definitely, I respect that. I respect that. But it was very cool. And so then we talked a lot, like just the conversations on the boat that you'd have with people, and like, these are some of these mines have been here since like, not necessarily around the US, but like some of the mines out there that have been there since like the 40s, during World War I and things like that. And you start to realize, what was happening in World War I with U-boats and how close they got to our shores and things like that. Right. And so that was interesting, but we've never really discussed like the leaking of materials of old mines or old, ordinances and things like that. It would definitely be something that would be interested in talking about, because I think that's something, again, you just don't think about, because it could, over the long lasting period, it could have effect. I would say more locally, but it depends on how much is leaking and the currents where they're going and what's around that. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I did have an organization that worked with veterans. It was a nonprofit organization. I forget, it's a Team Blue or something like that, where they're on the East Coast of the U.S. and what they do is they work with veterans who come back from from their deployments and things like that. And obviously they go through life-changing, events.
It's hard to transition.
Hard to transition. But it's also that what the person was saying was that it's hard to feel like you have a purpose when you come home, because you're kind of lost in whatever you're doing. Right. And so what this organization does works with veterans to take them out on boats to do science experiments with scientists. So because a lot of these military guys have electronic training, like electronic engineering training, boat experience, being in the field, so they can take harsh kind of things. But what it did was it gave them a purpose. And it gave them an idea of what they could do. And some of them have gone on to become like marine technicians in the science world, or some of them have gone on to like open up their own businesses and like be an electronic engineer or work with machinery and things like that. But what he says, like when people come home, it's a difficult transition. And so the idea of giving them something to do and something like a purpose to do and to fulfill makes them feel like they're wanted, like they have something to do. They're going from battle where they have orders and they do certain things to come home where it's peaceful and now you got to live life and you got to forget, people, like if you think about what we ask people, like military people to do. And of course, I don't know a lot of military people. I'm not as close to a lot of military people, but if you think about the idea is you go and you fight for our freedoms, and then you come home and you're supposed to just, forget what you went through and like all the mental stuff and potentially, hopefully not, but physical stuff, that rehabilitation. And then you're just supposed to live life as if nothing happened. Like, it's just a very interesting way of thinking about it. And so having programs like this that help, like going out to sea or doing some work in the science world where people can be very useful and not just useful, but like integral to the science that does it, and it makes them feel like they have purpose. And of course, everybody being out in the ocean makes you feel good. We all love the ocean. So, and
it's called Team Blue.
I think so. I'll have to look it up. I think it's called.
I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, it was one of my earlier interviews, so I'll have to look that up. But yeah,
I love talking to the veteran organizations.
So good.
And I mean, I love talking to nonprofits, period, especially if it's a very good nonprofit helping, making a difference. All right, so before I get to my last question, well, two things. Number one, tell everybody how they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me by going to speakupforblue.com, all one word, speakupforblue.com. I have 2 podcasts on there, How to Protect the Ocean podcast, which covers pretty much everything around the ocean and conservation. And then Beyond Jaws, which we talked about, Shark Science podcast. If you're interested in sharks, you're interested in learning about the shark scientists that are doing the wonderful work and the great work. We even have a great episode where we got older, like the shark vets, let's just say. We call them the Jaws generation. And we talked about the 50-year anniversary of Jaws and how it impacted their career.
God.
And if you think about it, like a lot of people would say Jaws made kind of made sharks look evil all the time, which, it did have that component. But the one component that nobody knows, it actually caused a lot of funding to go towards great white shark research, because all of a sudden government officials are like, we need to know more about these because people are freaking out, and great white sharks in the US is one of the greatest conservation stories that we have seen in a long time, because there are a lot of great white sharks on the West Coast and a nursery area like in Southern California, and then there's a lot of great white sharks on the East Coast that are now starting to move up into Canada more and more. So these things were once endangered, still technically endangered, but they're getting better, and the populations are getting better because we studied them more. And it was Jaws helped that funding start to this Jaws generation where you're seeing guys and women who have been absolutely amazing and crucial to furthering our information about sharks.
Andrew, thanks for making me feel so damn old now when you just mentioned that Jaws is 50 freaking years old.
I get it. I was born, I think, when one of them, like a year after one of them was released. So I get it. I understand.
And I just saw something about how that movie, it scared a lot of people, but you did not see the shark until like almost the end. It was just that music, that dun dun, 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 dun.
Do you know why? Do you know why you didn't see the shark a lot?
Well, it was a robot, wasn't it?
And it sucked. As a robot, it sucked. They said they had so many, they tried to fix it so many times. It never worked. Because you think about it, it's the 70s, right? When they shot this.
Yeah, there was no computer graphics or anything.
There's no CGI or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was an actual robot in the water. One of the scientists was actually from Cape Cod and was watching a lot of this, like being shot and stuff. And, you're just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this thing did not work, and it scared the heck out of all of us. You know what I mean? So it made us think up twice about going into our own pools.
Those would make good blooper reels.
Oh yeah. There's I'm not sure there's footage. There's a lot of like pictures of the robot shark, like from the set. Like it's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, wait a minute. Did I ask you? I can't remember if I asked you if there was anything you wanted to add or not. You threw me off with Jaws.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Was there anything you wanted to add?
I would say, like, for my mission of getting people to understand the ocean best, I would say, like, how people say touch grass, like to kind of feel grounded to the earth. Touch some ocean, touch some water, get connected. It's very important that we are connected to nature, not just oceans, but like, I'm going to assume a lot of your audience is from the U.S. Your national parks are phenomenal. Oh my God. Your national park system is phenomenal. Yeah. Go out, touch a tree, touch grass, connect with the ocean. Go on a boat ride, go fishing. If you're a hunter, go hunting. Go and connect with nature. Scuba diving, snorkeling. Just go by the beach, go by the ocean, go by the lake. It's good therapy. And just listen. Listen to the sounds around you. The quiet, the birds chirping, maybe a fish coming out of the water, and you feel that little bloop, like of it coming up and grabbing like an insect or something like that. It's the best way to really understand how important the ocean is and how important nature is. because a lot of the times in this type of world that we live in, it's very easy to run from thing to thing to thing during our day and not think about the ocean. We are a society here, especially here in North America, that is based on convenience. And so we try to make everything move as fast as possible. And we don't stop and just touch grass or touch water, you know, and I think it's really important that we connect with the ocean so that we can understand how nature plays a role in our world and how good it is for you. It is so good for you.
That's why it's one of the easiest sounds to fall asleep to as well.
Absolutely.
Ocean sounds?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
All right, so Andrew, pick a number between 1 and 100.
I am going to go 66 for a great Canadian hockey player, Mario Lemieux.
Oh, wow. Oh.
I'm going to go back to that. It's my Canadian in me. Played for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Amazing.
You know what? Okay. I have to tell you this story real quick because my daughter, she's 24, she's big into hockey now. Yes. And Montreal Canadiens are one of her favorite teams. The Hurricanes, which I explained to her, I said, I don't understand why a hockey team would be called the Canes because that has nothing to do with ice. The other one, I think, the other team she likes now is it the Devils?
New Jersey Devils?
Yeah, it might be. And she may like the Penguins now, too.
Yeah.
But I told her, I said, now Penguin makes sense for a team name because I get on her all the time because I keep saying, yeah, go Blackhawks. She's like, no, they suck. But I think she got into it because of the guys. Who's the one guy? Seth Jarvis?
Seth Jarvis. There's a bunch of guys that
I know.
have really caught the eye.
And there's a bunch of brothers and all of this.
Yeah.
And I tried to watch it. I can't find the puck.
You know what? That's a big problem for a
fast.
lot of people. They came out one time, I think it was Fox, came out one time with they made the puck glow in the dark or glow. So it had a blue thing. And Canadians made fun of Americans so much for that. We're like, are you serious? It's a black round thing on a white surface. How can you not see it? Just give it time. Take some time to really watch it. And you'll get it eventually. What I recommend over the holiday season, there's the World Juniors.
Yes.
And the World Juniors is so fun because these are the kids that are coming up and they're gonna make it. These are the next NHLers from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, the US system has become powerful in terms of hockey.
Oh, they're
over the
big
last
into
few
hockey.
years.
Yeah.
Here. And I'm not sure if you watched the First Nations Cup last year or the Four Nations Cup last year. It was the US, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. 4 teams. It was a tournament. Canada beating the US out of it, but it got interesting. The first game they played in the round robin, the first 10 seconds there were 3 fights between Canada and the US. 2 of them started by the Tkachuk brothers on the U.S. and it made it fun to watch. The Tkachuk brothers, yeah,
yes,
and it made it fun to watch. It was great hockey because you got the best. And the thing with hockey players that's maybe different from NFL and NBA is that when they do a country team, because the NHL is made up of all the different players from every country, the competition is fierce. When you go into the Olympics or you go into these Four Nations Cup, that was the first time that was ever done. But when you start talking, and there's pride on the line. The NHL doesn't like giving up their players to their countries, but they don't have a choice. These players were I will, some have gotten injured for the rest of the year. And that's what the NHL is worried about. The owners are worried about, but these guys, this is this is our military. We will die for this tournament. And if we come in anywhere other than first, that's it. The criticism flies here in Canada. It's not good. So it's a fun thing because it really looks at the pride of hockey, and hockey players love to play hockey, and it's kind of like the old school rules in a way. It's great hockey in terms of there's less fighting, but you can't get away with doing dumb stuff. You know what I mean? You say something wrong to a guy, he will fight you, and he will only pay 5 minutes of penalty time. You know what I mean?
That's the one great thing about hockey. I think it's the only sport out there where you're going to see fights all the time.
Yeah.
And the penalty's not that strict.
Yeah.
You look at baseball, football, these guys get heavy fines and are sometimes suspended for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest though. I think like with football and basketball too, if a fight breaks out, especially in football, there's no way the refs can control that because it's not one-on-one. It's like 63 humongous people who have built muscle their entire lives on 63, right? Like it's a riot because like how do you stop these massive human beings from fighting each other? Whereas hockey, the linesmen are tough guys and they will like hold you down and cover you, but there's a unwritten rule in terms of I'm not trying to kill you, I'm just trying to beat you up a little bit. And sometimes there's a great thing. So I know we got to go, but there's a great story. Wendell Clark used to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. He was like your typical hockey player at the time. Like he'll go in the corners, bump you around a bunch. He'll fight if he has to, but he can also put the puck in the net. So like we call it almost like your typical Canadian player, like the grinder,
right? That
kind of player. So he retired, and so they had this other guy, Marty McSorley, who was also like, both of them were used as enforcers on their team. So back in the 80s and 90s, like Marty McSorley was on the Edmonton Oilers, and that's where Wayne Gretzky was on. Now, Wayne Gretzky is the pride and joy of hockey. He is like the Jesus of hockey, And back then, because he was so important, you would have an enforcer on the team. So if anybody messed with Gretzky, anybody tried to hit him, anybody tried to slash him, you even look at him the wrong way. Marty McSorley was in your face beating you up. Like that was it. That was the rule. So these both Wendell Clark and Marty McSorley have fought each other, have fought other people. But Marty McSorley was on there. They all have respect for each other. This is what the great thing about hockey is. Marty McSorley one time told a story where Wendell Clark was on the Quebec Nordiques, which is now Colorado. And Marty McSorley was on LA. And LA was beating the Quebec Nordiques like 5-2. So Wendell Clark goes on the ice, Marty McSorley's on the ice, and they're talking like between the commercial break, and Wendell's like, "How's it going? Like, how you doing? How the kids? Oh, they're great. All this, just to let you know, we got to go. Like, we got to drop the gloves." Marty's like, "Yeah, no problem. Okay." He goes, "I understand it's 5-2. You're trying to get your team going." They just understood what the rules were.
Right.
There's no hard feelings. We got to go. So puck drops. Gloves go off. They fight each other. They go out to the bar after and talk about it. That's hockey for you. Wrapped up in like 5 minutes.
That is too funny. I forgot. You said 66.
66 for Mario Lemieux.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the last. This is a good question.
Okay.
If you could witness any historical event firsthand, which one would it be?
Oh my God. Any historical event firsthand. That is so good because there's so many. Not just like ocean related, but I'm trying to think ocean related because I'm a marine biologist. I would say going back to like the first person who discovered the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. I think that would have been a cool experience, like to see that. That, and I have a friend who was part of a team that got the first captured video of a live deep sea squid.
That giant thing?
Yeah. Yeah, because normally when we see it, it comes up to the surface, it's dead. But this one, they had a specific camera that they put in. Dr. Edith Witter was like in charge of it. But Dr. Nathan Robinson was the guy in charge of looking at the camera. But if you think about it, you have this camera down for like days on end in the dark, right? And it's a specialized camera to look in the dark. And then you've got like hundreds of hours of recorded stuff that you have to go through. So sometimes you'll see some, like, we call it marine snow. Right. So you'll see like some things, see some bioluminescent, the stuff come in, but it's boring. Right. Like it's just black, and then like, think about it at some point during that time, during those hours and hours and hours. And so it's days of you looking at this video, probably in fast forward and stuff. You come across like a little site. You're like, whoa, what the hell's that? You rewind and then you look and it's a deep sea squid, like a giant squid, right? Or a colossal squid. And you see the eyes, and it actually comes up to the camera, and it like grabs it to like, fiddle around. It's like, what is this in the deep sea? It's bright. It's got a color onto it. It had like something to attract it. Is it food? Nope. Okay, cool. And then it just disappears. But that's like one of the first, I think it's like they've gotten it twice, like in different parts of the world, one in Japan, and one actually I think was in the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
And it was like really cool to see that. So I would love to have been part of that team to be able to see that.
Now I'm going to have to look for that video.
Yeah.
Although I'm not going to watch hundreds of hours of it.
No, this one is just, you'll just see the clip. There is a clip out there. I'll send it to you. There's a clip out there. It's pretty cool.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Andrew, I want to thank you so much. Those of you listening, make sure that you go and listen to the podcast. And when you do, two things. Number one, subscribe to it and leave some comments.
Yeah.
Us podcasters, one of the things we love is to hear from you listeners. And we'll even take ideas. May even have you on the show. You never know. Andrew, thanks a lot, brother. Take care, man.
Thank you, Rich. I had a great time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Conversations with Rich Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something from it as I did. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners and share more incredible stories. Don't forget to connect with us on social media or visit our website at conversationswithrichbennett.com for updates, giveaways, and more. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep the conversations going. It takes a lot to put a podcast together, and my sponsors help out a lot, but I also have some supporters that actually help me when it comes to the editing software, the hosting, and so forth. There's a lot that goes into putting this together. So I want to thank them. And if you can, please visit their websites, visit their businesses, support them however you can. So please visit the following. Full Circle Boards. Nobody does charcuterie like Full Circle Boards. Visit them at fullcircleboards.com. Sincerely Sawyer Photography. Live in the moment. They'll capture it. Visit them at sincerelysawyer.com. The Joppatown Lions Club. Serving the community since 1965. Visit them at joppatownlionsclub.org. And don't forget the E at the end of Joppatown because they're extraordinary.